Ladies and gentlemen, and our first performer coming up here on stage this evening is a lady who made some waves a couple of years ago with a song, She'll Die With Her Dignity. She went on and she made it to the final in the Calypso Monarch this year in Trinidad and Tobago, and she was very, very strong. And she's coming to open the show with some War. The name of the song, The War Goes On. I would like you to sit back, relax, Caribbean people, and put your hand together and welcome on stage, singing Sandra. Here she comes, ladies and gentlemen, singing Sandra.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Devastation and destruction from ever since time began has been inflicted time and again by man against fellow man. Yet man wouldn't learn from history. It makes him more violent, producing deadly weaponry with nothing but evil intent. So the war could never be over. Peace will never be seen. Long as man in his quest for power keep destroying fellow human beings, fellow human beings. I'm telling you, nobody, nobody. But when you really look at it, nobody wins a war. Because the agony of defeat will linger, nations still hating one another and superpowers. They're looking for more power. Look, as long as violence and aggression still dwell in the hearts of man, brother, the war will go on. It cannot be won. No, 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 the war will go on. It cannot be won. Fallout from war is chaos, plenty agony, plenty pain. Economies left in shambles that may never rise up again. Collapse of the money system, disruption of foreign trade. People turning against their leaders for the blunders that they have made. Environmental pollution, radiation taking its course, and the thousands that die in battle. Oh, what a waste of human resource. Of course, I know nobody, oh, nobody. But when I really think of it, nobody wins a war. The brutal clash of ideologies, carnage and social anarchy, and life reduced to pitiful dimensions. The falling back of progress and growth for entire generation. Sister, it cannot be won. The war will go on. No, 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 the war will go on. It cannot be won. War is just like a racket. It pays dividends for a few. But what does it profit the masses? I mean laymen like me and you. While the leaders play their chess game, using the masses as pawn with political propaganda. The massacre still goes on. The soldiers, they never started, but they give their lives easily. While those leaders are in a safe place working on strategies. So you see, I'm telling you, nobody, oh, nobody. But when I really look at it, nobody wins a war. It has taken the passage of history with the blood of the weak and the mighty. Great cultures vanish completely. Brother, war can create and destroy political boundaries as it goes on. Listen, the war will go on. It cannot be won. No, 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 the war will go on. It cannot be won. The object of war is simple. Just conquer and take over. It doesn't matter how many people get wiped out in the massacre. The enemy must be vanquished. The battle has to be won. For the conflict could never be over. For the other that's on. There'll always be moderators for Hitler's more Saddam Hussein. And with these lunatics in power, it will just start all over again. And I say, I know nobody, oh nobody. When you really look at it, nobody wins a war. We need a spiritual revolution to stop this brutish aggression. Always peace in the world will always be out of our hands. As long as the quest for wealth and power still live in the hearts of man, sister, the war will go on. It cannot be won. No, 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 the war will go on. It cannot be won. The war will go on. Peace in the world. Look, we need a spiritual revolution. The war will go on. Lord, put a hand, save the children. The war will go on. Man fighting against man. The war will go on. It cannot be won. The war will go on. Spiritual revolution.
The war will go on. It cannot be won. So long as greed dwell in the hearts of man, the war will go on. It cannot be won. Good evening. Singing Sandra Devines, one of our classics. The war will go on. We're in the presence of war in the Middle East, war in Europe, but it's the one in the Middle East. Over 40,000 Palestinian lives have been lost. Some Israeli lives have been lost, but over 40,000. And now the theater of the war has moved to Lebanon. Iran has gotten involved. The United States is already involved. Israel is doing as it pleases. The world system has collapsed. Where a client state is doing as it pleases. We are just next door to a neighbor that has been threatening war in Guyana. Human lives mean nothing to the warmongers. Nothing. Singing Sandra says we need a spiritual revolution of the spirit. But is it possible to appeal to some spirits? If what is driving the violence, the war, is a sense of superiority, a sense that those on whom you inflict violence are inferior, then there is a particular logic to that. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. That's the subtext. Good evening, wherever you're joining us from, on this Tuesday evening. Welcome to Politics 101. If you're joining us from inside Guyana, welcome to Politics 101. If you're joining us outside of Guyana, welcome. Welcome to Politics 101. Last night, we had a frank discussion, and tonight we want to continue that discussion. Where our country is headed. We have our own war going on, in Guyana, where we have a government that is driven by its own sense of superiority, its own sense that it alone can govern Guyana. You see, when, as a teenager, I and others came into politics in the 70s, we were driven by ideals of wanting a better world, a better Guyana. And we felt that the government of the day was moving Guyana down a path that was not wholesome. And we put our lives on the line. We asked African Guyanese to turn against a government of their own. Yes, we Africans who were part of the anti-dictatorial struggles, we call it, those of us in the WPA, Africans, we ask African Guyanese to reject a government that they had voted for, a government of their own, because we felt that that government was not doing well. We did, we Africans, I and others, ask African Guyanese to turn against their own. We stood up against our own. We paid with our liberty, some of us. Some of us paid with our lives. Jack Dio and Irfan Ali and others have never had to tell Indian Guyanese to turn against a government of their own. Never, never. Today, some of us who 50 years ago asked African Guyanese to turn against a government of their own, we are now standing with African Guyanese as they are being battered by a government that is not of their own. And for doing so, we are called racist. That is the Guyana we live in, the hypocrisy of Guyana. Some people are accusing me of going against my own actions of the past. You see, 50 years later, you look back and you're able to view the past with lenses that you didn't have when you were in the thick of things. I didn't know then that for the PPP, going against Burnham was not going against a dictatorship. It was going against a group of people that Burnham and the PNC represented politically. It was going against the PNC to prove that Black people could not govern. I didn't know it then. I know it now. The hatred that the PPP has inculcated in its supporters for Burnham, the PNC, is not just about Burnham's dictatorship and Burnham's wrongdoing. It's a racial hatred. 50 years later, we are understanding the motions of Guyanese politics. It is for that reason that people like myself have to expend a lot of energy to see the back of this government. We who, with our blood and our liberty, we who with our blood and our liberty made it possible for these Jacobats, I don't use that term, but I'm going to use it tonight, for these Jacobats to be in power. They never saw the inside of a jail cell. They don't know what is imprisonment. The power that they now enjoy as a result of the struggles of people like me, who went against a government of my own race and ethnicity on a principle of right and wrong. We felt that the government was wrong, and we were driven by that principle of rightness and wrongness, not by race. If we were driven by race, we would not have opposed Burnham. People like myself, who they call racist today, if we were racist, we would not have opposed Burnham. We would have stuck with Burnham, regardless of whether we thought he was wrong, just as our Indian comrades are doing today. The Indian activists, the Indianists, they're quarreling with the PPP over Jagan and Janet and whether they were communists. That's what they're quarreling with them about. They're not quarreling with them about what they are doing to our country and what they're doing to Black people in our country. No. They want to see the PPP in there till Resurrection Day. People like myself, on a matter of principle, on what was right or what was wrong, when we oppose a government of our own. Yet today, we are called racist. If you're a racist, you believe in the superiority of your race, whether they're wrong or right. That has not been our history. That has not been my history. Yet we fetch the burden today of being racist. But it is part of political life. It's part of political life. I want Indians who are listening, and I know lots of them listen to this program, watch this program. You all are talking, you all are looking at someone here who was part of a generation of African Guyanese who give up our liberty, give up our lives in instances, fighting a government of our own race. And yet you all sit there and allow those jackasses to tell you all that David Hines is a racist. When David Hines fought for you all Indians, at a time when you all, the PPP, couldn't fight for you all. And you all sit up in this country and look at people like me and call me a racist. Some of you all innocently, some of you all knowingly. When I fought for what you all are enjoying today, whatever you all call it, went to jail, my comrades died. And I'm talking to Indian people tonight. And I'm not holding back because some of you all are allowing yourself to be misled knowingly. You are running around the country now, flapping your wings because people like me stood up for you all. And I'm talking it real tonight. I have to go and face my own people and to tell them your own government is doing wrong. Back to back, belly to belly. I don't give a damn. I've done that already. Indian people, I fought for you all freedom. When you all felt you all didn't have freedom. When your leaders were hiding in Freedom House. They didn't want to come on the streets. When we were on the streets in public meetings and facing up to the bullets, and we asked the PPP to send speaker, the only one who volunteered to come was Moses Nagamutu. All the others were hiding in Freedom House. And you all make them telling you all David Hines is a racist. But I want you all to tell them, David Hines is telling you all tonight, he fought for you all freedom, Indian people. You all need to say thanks to people like me. Tired of it. And today, you all are supporting a party. You all are supporting a party that is beating up on you all black sisters and brothers. And the majority of you all are remaining silent. The majority. Some of you all are standing up and you all are paying for it. And we are forever grateful. There's some people in my own party who are telling me I favor black people and I'm not multiracial and all that stupidness, foolishness. Multiracialism is not saying I'm multiracial. I risk my life for the freedom of Indian people. That is the ultimate of multiracialism. Yes, there are people in my own political family. David, this African thing, asking me to be an Uncle Tom. Some of you may know the story of a woman named Margaret Garner, an African American. She was a slave. And she crossed the river between Kentucky and Ohio. Ohio was then a free state. Kentucky was a slave state. And she, her husband, and her 4 children, 4 little children, made it across the river. The river was frozen. And they walk across the frozen river, risking, because, if they had made a step and that ice had given way, they could have, but they crossed the river and got over to Ohio. And they were rescued in the home of a free African. And they went into the house. 2 hours later, the sheriff and the authorities descended on the house to capture them and to send them back into bondage in Kentucky. And they surrounded the house, and people from the community came out, white people, and surrounded the house. And Margaret Garner made a decision. She decided that she was going to kill her 4 children rather than have them go back into slavery. She managed to kill one of the children. The other 3 were wounded, but they weren't killed. She was arrested and charged with murder. But the court decided that since she was a slave, she was property and could not be tried as a human being. But she was sent back to Kentucky. And the story is not finished, because on the boat going back to Kentucky, she threw the 2 children, 2 more of the children, into the river. And they drowned. Public opinion was divided in the United States. White people said, you see, these black people are animals. Look at what she did. She killed her own children. That's what white people said. Those who were enslaved, black people, and even free blacks, stood with Margaret Garner because they agreed that it was better for children to die than to go back into bondage. The harshness of oppression and where it drives people. Immediately after that, in the southern states of the United States, they went on a campaign of what they called the happy slave, to tell black enslaved people that slavery is good. You're happy. Don't worry with the Margaret Garners of the world. You're happy. I tell that story because as I look around my Guyana today, I see the campaign about the happy slave. African people are being massacred economically, politically, physically. And yet we have the government and some of the Indian elite telling black people Guyana is being developed. What are you worrying about? Look how we are being developed. The campaign, the happy slave campaign, that's what they're into in Guyana. But he who feels it, she who feels it, knows it. African people know what they are going through. And it seems as though nobody cares. When I say nobody, I mean people who are comfortable with this government, either ignorantly or intentionally. Oppression drives people to the extreme. Margaret Garner was driven to the extreme. I don't think in 2024, African people are going to kill their children rather than send them back into bondage, but they are going to react. That story of Margaret Garner is a telling story. We hear about slavery and we hear about how terrible it was. And some people are trying to tell us it was not terrible. But that is a true story. That woman killed her children rather than send them back into bondage. She had no power to change, but she had the power not to send her child back. Or the story of Frederick Douglass. We hear about Frederick Douglass, the great black abolitionist, the great African freedom fighter. What we don't know is that he was raised by his grandmother up until he was 6 years old and was ready to become an active slave. And his grandmother took him away from the plantation. She said she was taking him for a walk. And she took him and abandoned him rather than have him become a slave at 6 years old. He eventually was captured and became a slave at 6 years old. Eventually escaped and made his way to Massachusetts from Maryland. I tell those stories to talk about the harshness of oppression. The stories in our villages are not being told. What our people have to go through. I grew up in a village where you go to visit someone, the first thing they do is offer you something. Something to eat, something to drink. Now you go to visit people, they meet you at the gate because they have nothing to offer. I go to visit old friends, all the people than myself who I grew up and looked up to, and I go, older women and older men to visit, and they said, you know, David, I ain't got nothing to offer you. I experience that every day when I'm in Guyana. Our people have nothing. Economic violence they go through every day. Fear. They can't even speak. And people are telling us about development. Things are not regular. Things not regular among Black people. I'm sure things are not regular among other ethnic groups. I'm sure of that. But there's a particular irregularity among Africans. The way in which our people are reduced to beggars, to almost like slaves in their own country. And people are telling me about multiracialism. David, talk about multiracialism. Don't talk about Africans. What the hell are you telling me? My people are hurting, they're bleeding, and you are telling me I must talk about class and... No. Martin Carter says, no, I will not still my voice. I have too much to claim. Martin Carter, I continue. I've learned from books, dear friend, of men who lived in a room hungering without any light. I don't have to learn that from books. I know it firsthand. Of men who could not die since death is far too poor. Of men who did not sleep to dream, but dreamed to change the world. The reason we have to change course in Guyana, but we have to change the government force. I don't know what a new government will bring. I don't know what a PNC-led new government will bring. I don't know, but at this point, that's not my concern. My concern is that this murderous government has to go. I am prepared to take that chance. I am prepared to take that chance with a new government not knowing what they will do. But I know what this one is doing. Black people, I'm trying to get you all to get with the program. Some of you all who are better off don't understand and don't appreciate what people have to go through. A couple of weeks ago, I left Guyana. Mosquito is now the order of the day as blackout is. I thought we had gotten rid of mosquitoes. I understand you go in some villages on West Bobis on the quarantine. Since 5 o'clock, meat mosquito attack you like soldiers in an army in Guyana. And you're telling me about development? And I must not speak about race? I must watch Black people crying tears, actual tears and figurative tears And I must not speak about race. I am in sympathy with my brother, my brothers, political leaders, who find a way not to speak about race, not to speak about what's happening to Black people. I'm in sympathy with them, but that's not my political culture. I stood up when Indian people were being beaten down. I stood with them and fought with them and for them. And my people, from whose seed I come, are now being beaten down 50 times worse. And you are telling me I must not stand with them, because if I stand with them and speak about their suffering, then I will not get crossover vote. Keep your crossover vote. We've been crossing over all the time. Many rivers to cross, Jimmy Cliff said, but I can't seem to find my way over. Sometimes I feel like committing some dreadful crime, but only my pride keeps me alive, says Jimmy Cliff. Many rivers to cross. We've always been crossing rivers, by the rivers of Babylon. We have been swimming back to Africa always. We have our own crossover to deal with. To hell with you on your crossover votes. Don't ask me to trade the blood and the sweat and the suffering of my people for a vote. What kind of fool is you? Says my favorite comedian, Dick Gregory. What kind of fool is you? Trading the blood and the sweat of your people for a vote that you're not sure of? The happy slave. Last night I made the observation. I wasn't there. When I look at that stadium, the cameras couldn't find Black people. Couldn't find Black people. Why Black people were not at this? I've been going to cricket since I'm a boy. And there were always equal numbers: Indian people, Black people, Portuguese people, Chinese people watching cricket. All of a sudden, the face of cricket audience in Guyana is Indian. Where's our country going? Why are Black people not there? And then you have the Indo-Trinidadian commentators. God, I love Ganga and I love Badri, but they keep running their mouths about development in Guyana. What kind of development, Samuel Badri? And think, Indian solidarity, that's what it was. That's what they were doing. They know damn well what development is because they're from Trinidad. They have commandeered the cricket. Now they're talking about Guyana Amazon Warriors playing some T20 competition among other teams. Since when Guyana Amazon Warriors is Guyana? But Guyana, the ownership of Guyana Amazon Warriors is part of the economic superstructure, dominance of the Indian bourgeoisie. I will never tell black people don't go and watch cricket because the Amazon Warriors franchise is owned by an Indian. I will not be that foolish and childish and stupid. I will not tell people not to go and watch cricket but the truth of the matter is that the CPL, the Guyana Amazon Warriors, is part of the PPP's economic stranglehold and dominance of our country. And it has to be said. And so it's no accident that the stadium is mostly Indian people. One of my cousins, who was never a talkative boy when we were growing up, sent me a long letter last night, and I read it about 5 times. And he said it better than I could. He explained in that letter to me, which I'm going to keep, about what we saw at that CPL. Black people, you're in danger in that country. You're in danger in that country. And it's in your hands. This is not going to be solved. This issue is not going to be solved by chatting, reason. We are led by a group of people in government and outside of government who are convinced that we black people are not worth anything. That is what is driving them. Black people, you all are in danger in Guyana. You all are in danger. And some of you all are signing up for the Happy Slave program, because that's what the PP is about now, is to get some Africans and to parade them, to say, look how you're happy. Don't worry with Norton and Hines and the rest of them. You all are happy. And how they know you all are happy? Because you all are not raging. You all are not raging. I love some of my brothers, my Indian brothers. But they're not going to get me to talk about some nonsense about renegotiating a contract. I'm not breath. This government spent $1 billion from the Natural Resource Fund last year. $1 billion US dollars. They clean out the fund. And you're telling me that is paltry? Wait there. Where the paltry there? What is pen and pan? This year they're getting more. They're getting about 3 billion, 4 billion US dollars. Glenn, is that paltry? No, Brother Glenn. You can afford to talk about renegotiating contract. David Hines can't. I have to talk about the billions that we are getting and how black people not getting any. We have to call it out for what it is. they're slapping the PPP on its wrist. $1 billion last year. Where gone? In Isle money. They clean out. Spend them. On bridge and road, gone in the pocket of their cronies. That's where it's gone. And I must take my good self and talk about renegotiating contract. I want to renegotiate the contract between the government and the people of Guyana. That's the contract I want to renegotiate. Let's talk. And that's the contract you all black people and opposition supporters of all races should be talking about. Renegotiation of the contract between the government and its people. You taking my money, our money, and spending it on bridge and road. I didn't tell you I want bridge and road. We didn't tell you. The people of Denamstel and Virginusian and Stroudville and Buxton, Plaisance, Eversham, Firish, Belladrum, Linden, South Georgetown, they didn't tell you that they want road. But you, some of you all who didn't go to school far, some of you all who been at the bottom of the school when school been going on, are you? I spend our money. And people are telling me, no, David, talk about renegotiating contract. Black Stallion said, wait, Dorothy, wait. My fans and them tell me I must sing a song for wind up and jump up and wind down with Dorothy. But until Mr. Divider divide the bread equally, wait, Dorothy, wait. That's what Black Stallion sang 40 years ago. Renegotiating of the contract can wait. I'm into no stupid talk about multiracialism. I'm into racial equality and racial equitability. That's what I want to talk about. Stupid multiracialism. I want to talk about racial equitability and racial equality. Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's work to that for that. Black people, African people, all you in plenty trouble. And are you playing around? Are you not raging enough? No people deserve to be treated in the way African people are treated in Guyana. I understand the ticket them to go to the stadium too expensive for black people. That's telling. That's telling. The multiracialism of our day, in our time, is not the multiracialism of 40 years, 50 years ago, when we could have gotten a critical mass of Africans and a critical mass of Indians to move together and struggle together. That ain't happening. That multiracialism sail and gone. The multiracialism of 2024 is racial equity, racial equitability, racial respect. That's the multiracialism of our time. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, multiracialists. Some people just like cliches, you know. Multiracial sound nice. People will say, oh, you're a lovely guy. Lovely. I do my multiracial time when I ask black people to go against your own government and I fight for Indian people rights. I do my time with that. The new multiracialism is about African people and Amerindian people being treated with the same kind of respect that Indian people are treated with. People tell me that Indian people are suffering. Of course, Indian people are suffering. Indian poor people. They got as many Indian poor people as black poor people and Amerindian poor people. That's a fact. Poverty in the Indian community is as stark as it is in the black community or the Amerindian community. But the Indian woman can go to sleep at night not fearing that the police will shoot down her son. She's poor. She's poor, but she doesn't have to worry about extrajudicial killing. She doesn't have to worry about the police being sent by the powers to kill her husband lying next to her at night. She's poor, but she doesn't have to worry about extrajudicial killing. That Indian woman is poor. In some respect, poorer than black women. But she doesn't have to worry about the government coming and bulldozing her home and sending the police to kneel on her chest. She doesn't have to worry about that. She's poor, but she doesn't have to worry about that other kind of poverty. The poverty of inequality, unequal dignity. Oh yes, that Indian woman at Lenora is poor. That Indian woman at Iflop is poor, but she doesn't have to worry about somebody putting on a red jersey on her daughter, giving her $40,000 and parading her like a slave. She doesn't have to worry about that. She's poor, but she doesn't have to worry about the poverty of being treated like a slave. Let's talk tonight. Let's talk tonight. Every time I hear my sister politician, my brother politician, Indian people suffering too. Indian people are suffering differently. Black people are suffering all house by all house. They're poor economically, and they're hammered. That Indian woman doesn't have to worry about her daughter who's a lawyer. Her daughter who's a lawyer, representing her client, and would be thrown in jail for representing her client. She doesn't have to worry about that. That Indian woman doesn't have to worry about her daughter having to endure being spat upon by a member of the Indian bourgeoisie. Yes, Indian people are poor, in some respects poorer than black people, economically. The Indian sugar worker is a worker who is being oppressed, who's not earning as much as he or she is supposed to earn. But that Indian sugar worker knows that when his union cough, the government is there and say, what you want? Take 'em, look 'em, take 'em. That Indian sugar worker knows that the PPP government will never take its eyes and pass on them by giving them 10% on a $80,000, $90,000, $100,000. Yes, the Indian sugar worker is underpaid, but he doesn't have to worry that he will only get 10% on that underpayment. Let's talk tonight. Back to back, belly to belly. I don't give a damn because my people already at death's door. David, stop it. You're dividing black people. Indian people feel that they have to tell black people how to talk to black people, tell black people who must lead them, tell that way, are we there? Are we there, Panam? But so long as there's breath, so long as I breath, I'm going to tell it as it is. And I want you all to spread it wide. I divide in black people. I revenue black. Yes, I revenue black people. I plead guilty to that. I plead guilty to that. I want, when the roll is called up yonder, that all you black people will be there. That Indian woman is poor, catching her ass just like black women, but she doesn't have to worry that her stall in front of Demico will be bulldozed. She doesn't have to worry about that, because no bulldozer going into Rose Hall or Port Morant to bulldoze her stall. She's poor. I acknowledge Indian poverty because it's real. Olos pan olos. Indians don't have to worry about olos pan olos. We are at a critical point in our history. We are at a critical point in Guyana when Samuel Badri and Darren Ganga talking about development. They're not talking about black people. They know what they're talking because they're from Trinidad. They understand race and ethnicity. They understand it. The camera had to search and search. I cannot, I think on the last day, they get the big thing them with the lucky visa, visa people who win visa and they're treated nicely and they dined. I think the last day at the final, I see a black couple. Prior to that, almost all the people them with them big winning the $1,000 and the $500 and so on are Indian people. This is not about Indian people. It's about black people. But one has to always look across. If Indian people can afford to pay and go to the cricket, God bless them. Some of them with a fancy American accent and Canadian accent, God bless them. I was disappointed that the Warriors lost. I used to cry when West Indies lost. I don't cry these days when they lose, because they lose so damn much I will not have tears left to cry when I really need to cry. But when the Warriors lost on Sunday, because it's not Guyana. You can't have a Guyana team when a South African is captain. What's wrong with them black and Indian boys on the team? They can't captain? They can't captain? So they lose. I was disappointed. I was disappointed that the Guyanese on the team didn't put up a better showing. But I understand what that cricket CPL story is all about. And I'm not telling black people don't support CPL, don't go to it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. You all are in trouble in Guyana, and you all got to begin to do something about it. Plain and simple, black people. You all are in trouble, but you all got to do something about it. I intend to campaign to remove this government at the next election. I intend to do so. But I do so with my eyes wide open, knowing that when the government changes, the PPP's domination would be entrenched. But we have to change them. I'm a power sharer. I believe ultimately Guyana's power has to be shared between its people, all its people, among its leaders. I believe so. But the PPP is not interested in sharing any power with anybody. Those of us who are power sharers have to come to grips with that. And so as a first step, we have to figure out how we going to share power among ourselves on the opposition side. And I know many of you all feel that our political party leaders are playing the fool. I know many of you all think so. I am a little bit more patient. I don't think they're playing the fool. I think they're playing politics. Playing politics could end up becoming playing the fool, but I don't think they're playing the fool. I think they're playing politics, and that is okay. But this government has to go. This government has to go for the good of Black people. For the good of Black people. You all have to make up your own mind and start acting. You all would come on this program and say, well, you all talk too much. Where's the action? Well, we have to talk you all into action. Aubrey Norton and Nigel Hughes and David Hines and others can go out there and stand up. But if I on there with we, it ain't no struggle. By the same token, you all can go on the streets on your own. You all can take action on your own. With or without your leaders, and it will make a difference. Leadership is important, I'm not denying that. But Margaret Garner did not need a civil rights leader to tell her, don't send your children back into slavery. She took that action on her own. She did what is right. She made that sacrifice of taking the lives of her own children as mark of freedom. That is the history that we come from, a history of defiance. Call to action, Black people. Call to action, Black people. Call to action. This is call to action. I started off by saying, with playing the song, "The War Will Go On." It cannot be won. We don't want no racial war. A racial war will consume all of us. We don't want no racial war. Because when we finish warring and kill up ourselves, Venezuela come in and take we land and take we country. We don't want no racial war. We don't want no racial war. But we want racial justice. And you don't get racial justice if you don't fight for it. So we don't want no war, but we don't want injustice to continue. You know, people always say, you know, David Hines preaching violence and all that kind of story. And a big but I'm stupid. You want no racial war? We don't want no racial war. But we want racial justice. All you figure that out. All you figure that out. We don't want no racial war, but we want racial justice. And it is possible to get racial justice without racial war. In any case, I've never known a war that was started by the people. Wars are always started by those who have the monopoly on the tools of war. Black people, the message tonight, going forward, you all got to get up and get. You all got to get busy. Because the train is a moving. The train is moving. And I am not afraid to say to my people, you have no right to live in misery. You have no right to live in injustice. You have no right to take the shit that you're taking from this government. You have no right under God's sun and God's heaven. I don't care how much and cyber land, cyber crime they bring. I'm saying it black eye. You have no right under God's heaven to take the shit that we taking. We're going down the road. Or we going up the road? It's up to the PPP to change course, and they're not going to change course. And if they're not going to change course, then we got to change the course of things. The words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Here tonight.